What happens when a doctor, the one who always saves patients, finds herself standing at the boundary of death? Life and the fateful stroke. Chicago, a bleak winter morning. The sky was covered with a heavy gray cloud, cold wind sweeping through the high-rise buildings like blades cutting into flesh. In a small apartment on the 17th floor of a building near the city center, Emily Carter had already awakened when the clock had only just struck 4:30. The phone alarm rang continuously, but in truth, she did not need it. Emily's sleep had long never been complete. The night shifts, the surgeries lasting many hours, the sounds of the monitors echoing in her ears, all still haunted her in every brief dream. Emily stood before the bathroom mirror, washing her face with cold water. The pale, gaunt skin reflected back in the mirror startled her for a moment. Dark circles under her eyes, a weary gaze, a few messy strands of hair falling onto her forehead. She took a deep breath, trying to regain her composure. Her hand touched her cheek. The coldness of the water made her somewhat alert. In the small kitchen, Emily brewed a cup of strong black coffee. No sugar, no milk. The only drink that could keep her standing through the long operations. The bitter taste, spread across her tongue, slid down her throat, leaving a harsh but necessary aftertaste. Breakfast was just a quick bite of dry bread. She chewed while opening the medical file to review the details of the urgent morning surgery. On the paper was the patient's name, Robert Jenkins, 58 years old, acute myocardial infarction, extremely high risk of death. Emily clenched the paper in her hand. It felt like a stone pressed heavily against her chest. After so many years in the profession, she was used to life and death. But every time she faced a life-or-death cardiac surgery, she still could not avoid the tension. The road to the hospital was crowded with traffic. Horns blared, tires screeched on the road soaked with melting snow. Emily hurried along, her long gray coat blown by the wind, hair disheveled. She tightened her scarf, eyes fixed on the hospital building glowing through the mist. In the changing room, Emily put on green scrubs, tied her hair neatly, and wore a mask. When she looked at herself in the mirror again, she saw a familiar image. Not Emily, the 36-year-old woman with a small family, but Emily, the heart surgeon, cold, focused, ready to face death every day. A young nurse entered, handing her an additional file. "Dr. Carter, the patient is in the recovery room. Blood pressure is unstable. The chief asked you to prepare immediately." Emily nodded, saying nothing. Her throat was dry, but she still tried to keep her voice steady. "Thank you. I'll be right there." The operating room was blazing with bright white lights. The machines beeped steadily, mixed with the hurried sounds of the medical staff. Emily washed her hands, the icy antiseptic water running between her fingers. She donned the sterile gown, put on gloves, and approached the operating table patient. Robert lay there, face pale, breathing weak. The smell of antiseptic, the plastic scent of tubes, the nervous sweat of colleagues blended into the suffocating air. Emily took a deep breath, her heart pounding inside her chest. She held the scalpel, the light reflecting off the gleaming steel blade. "Begin." Her voice rang out, firm. At that moment, everything around seemed to disappear. There was only the patient, the heart to be saved, and her hands. The scalpel cut a decisive line. Bright red blood gushed out, suctioned away quickly. Emily focused completely, each maneuver precise like a programmed machine. But her body was no longer what it once was. Sleepless nights, long shifts had worn her down. Sweat poured down, running to her temples, soaking her mask. Her heart raced wildly, ears rang, vision blurred. "No, not now. Don't collapse," Emily muttered in her head, struggling to concentrate. Suddenly, a sharp pain struck her head like a hammer. Her whole body reeled, her hands trembled. The scalpel nearly slipped, making a nurse cry out in alarm. Emily tried to hold on, but darkness clouded her eyes. The sounds around her warped, fading. Someone shouted, "She fainted!" "Quick, get Dr. Carter out." Emily's body collapsed, a cold numbness engulfing her. In her ears remained only the chaotic beating of her heart, then slower, slower. The smell of antiseptic vanished, the shouting drifted away, the white lights blurred. Then darkness fell. Emily fell onto the operating room floor. In that moment, She thought she had only fainted from exhaustion. But no, this feeling was entirely different. It was not temporary fatigue, but as if an invisible, powerful hand had pulled her soul out of her body. In the haze, Emily suddenly heard someone's voice. "Hurry! Her heart has stopped beating. Prepare the defibrillator." 200 joules. The sounds rang out urgently, vividly clear, but strangely she no longer felt connected to her body. Instead, when she opened her eyes, she saw herself, lying motionless on the operating room floor. The white light of the surgical lamp shone directly onto her face, pale skin, lips turning blue. Colleagues gathered around, trying to perform CPR, inserting a breathing tube. Each compression, each electric shock resounded with a thump, making that body jerk violently. But she, this I, was no longer lying there. She was floating above, looking down. A strange sensation filled her. Her body was weightless, without gravity. No more pain, no more fatigue. Every sense seemed sharper than ever. She could hear each hurried breath of the nurse, see clearly every drop of sweat rolling down the chief surgeon's forehead. Even the strong smell of antiseptic had now turned into a faint fragrance drifting past, no longer harsh as before. Emily panicked. What is this? Am I dead? No, I can't die now. She tried to reach out to touch her colleagues, but her hand passed through them as if she were nothing but smoke. The emptiness made her heart, or whatever was left, ache. Then suddenly, a radiant light appeared in the corner of the room. Not the light from the surgical lamps, but a gentle, warm, alluring glow. It was not blinding, yet it carried a mysterious power, like a door opening wide. Emily was drawn toward it. Her invisible body drifted through the operating room wall without meeting any obstacle. And then she stepped into another space. It was a long hallway, filled with silvery light. The glow radiated from the walls, from the tiled floor, from the surrounding air. The noisy sounds of the hospital were gone, leaving only a profound silence, as if the whole world was holding its breath. With each step Emily took, the floor beneath her feet shimmered, soft, like walking on waves of moonlight. Her bare feet no longer felt heavy, but light, as though she was gliding. Along the hallway, fragments of memories began to appear, at first faint, then so clear she could almost touch them. On the left side of the hallway, she saw herself as a child, little 7-year-old Emily, blonde hair tied in pigtails, playing in the garden with her father. Her laughter rang bright. The scent of fresh grass lingered in the air. The little girl ran around, her father chasing, scooping her up in his arms. A simple scene, long forgotten by Emily amidst the relentless grind of her work. Walking further, on the right side, she saw her mother sitting alone by the window in the old house, eyes red from worrying about her daughter, who was always buried in the hospital. In that image, Emily heard the heavy sigh, felt the loneliness of her mother piercing straight into her heart. Tears streamed down Emily's cheeks. She reached out to touch the image, but her fingers passed through like smoke. The deeper she walked, the more memories rushed forth. The image of graduation day, when Emily clutched her diploma tightly, her father's eyes glowing with pride. The tense moment in the operating room, her trembling hands holding a scalpel for the very first time. The sight of her younger brother waiting outside the hospital on his birthday, but Emily, tied up with her shift, could not return, his disappointed face turning away into the night. Those memories cut into her heart like knives. Emily had never allowed herself to stop and look back, but here, everything appeared vividly, unavoidable. She slowed her steps, chest tight with a choking sorrow. It felt like a dense fog had filled her throat, blocking her breath. Suddenly, at the end of the hallway, a warm voice resounded. "Emily!" She startled. That voice was so familiar her heart seemed to stop. It was her father's voice, the man who had passed away 10 years ago. The light at the end of the hallway grew brighter. The figure of a tall, middle-aged man appeared. Kind eyes, a gentle smile. He opened his arms wide. Emily's tears gushed forth, her whole body trembling. "Father, is it really you? I've missed you so much." Her steps broke into a run toward him, the echo of the hallway blending with the pounding of her heart. As she threw herself into her father's arms, Emily felt a warmth spreading through her body, not an illusion, but a true warmth, dispelling all the previous cold. She buried her face on his shoulder, sobbing like a child. Her father gently stroked her hair, whispering, "My daughter, you've strayed too far from yourself for too long already." In her father's embrace, Emily felt as if time had stopped. She could hear his steady breaths, the faint, familiar scent, the pine wood from the old coat he used to wear on winter days. Though she knew this might only be an illusion, the feeling was so real it melted her heart. "Father, I'm so tired," Emily sobbed, her voice breaking with each word. "Every day I race against time, saving lives without even knowing what I'm living for anymore. I've forgotten Mother, forgotten my family, even forgotten myself." Her father tightened his embrace, gently nodding. "I know. I've always seen you, even when you didn't notice. You carry too much, Emily, but you've never truly allowed yourself to stop and breathe." Emily looked up, tears filling her eyes. "Father, I've made so many mistakes. I missed my brother's birthday. I missed your final days. I've been so selfish, haven't I?" Her father shook his head, his gaze as tender as the sea. "No, my daughter. You only forgot that love and presence matter more than success. I don't blame you, but you must learn to forgive yourself." At those words, Emily's heart ached. She remembered the countless long nights on call, huddled beside a cold cup of coffee. She remembered the times she saw her mother calling, but didn't answer, too busy writing medical records. She remembered collapsing on a hospital bed, unable to tell day from night. Now, facing her father, it all came flooding back, like a wave sweeping away the hardened shell she had built for so long. Her father placed his warm hand on her chest, over her trembling ribcage. "Emily, do you hear it?" She listened. Strangely, in the silence, she heard a heartbeat, not from the body lying on the operating room floor, but from her very soul. It beat slowly but strongly, a reminder that life still remained. Her father spoke softly. "You still have a path left to walk. There are still people who need you. Your mother is still waiting. Your brother still hopes. And there are so many patients out there. They don't only need a doctor, they need a human being who knows how to love." Emily bit her lip, tears streaming faster. "But I'm afraid to return to that pressure. I'm afraid I'll lose myself again." Her father smiled, brushing her cheek lightly with his hand. "Fear is natural, but you are not alone. Love will guide you, as long as you open your heart. Remember, saving lives is not only with scalpels and medicine, but also with your heart." The light around them began to shift. The silver-lit hallway grew transparent, and in the distance, Emily saw a radiant golden gate. From it, she faintly heard voices calling, "We've got a heartbeat. Keep going. Prepare another dose of adrenaline." They were her colleagues' voices. Emily trembled. She knew that gate was the boundary between life and death. Death. If she stepped through, she would remain forever with her father in eternal peace. If she returned, she would continue bearing all the unresolved challenges. She turned to her father, eyes red with tears. "Father, I don't want to leave you again." Her father smiled, his eyes moist, yet shining with pride. "Emily, I am always in your heart. Wherever you are, I am with you. But you must live, my daughter. You must return. You still have a mission, unfinished." Emily choked with emotion. Her whole body trembled, her heart racing as if being torn apart. Part of her longed to remain forever in her father's embrace. Part of her was being pulled back toward harsh reality. Her father pressed his forehead to hers, whispering, "Believe in yourself, Emily. You are stronger than you think. Now, go back." Suddenly, a powerful light dragged Emily backward. She reached out, trying to grasp her father, but her hand slid through the void. "Father, I love you." "Father!" Emily screamed, her voice dissolving into the space. Her father's figure slowly faded, leaving only his final warm smile. In that moment, Emily felt her heart shatter. Yet, at the same time, a new strength surged within her. She knew she had to return. Emily's body jolted violently, as if a surge of electricity coursed through every fiber of her muscles. From afar, she heard hurried rustling, the sound of the monitor beeping. Beep, beep, faint and uneven. "We've got a pulse. Keep monitoring. Blood pressure is rising again," the head doctor shouted. In her haze, Emily felt as though she were being pulled back into a cramped cage. The light, floating feeling of standing beside her father vanished, replaced by heaviness and pain, searing from head to toe. Her chest felt crushed under a boulder. Her throat burned from the endotracheal tube. The stinging smell of disinfectant seeped into every breath. She opened her eyes. Everything was blurry, the operating room lights glaring so bright they stung. Her colleague's face leaned close to her, eyes tense, then gradually softening as they saw her move. "She's awake. Emily, can you hear me? Blink if you can hear." Tears spilled from her eyes, though her mouth could not speak. The room burst into noise, orders being called, machines beeping, footsteps rushing. But within all that chaos, only one thing remained in Emily's mind: her father's smile. The days in the hospital. Emily lay in the recovery room, surrounded by IV lines, ventilators, and the steady beeping of monitors. She felt frail, her body like an exhausted shell. But inside her, another flame had been lit. On the third day, her mother entered the room. Her hair had turned much grayer. Dark circles marked her eyes from sleepless nights, yet they lit up when she saw her daughter awake. "Emily, my daughter." Her voice trembled as she clasped Emily's hand tightly. Emily broke down in tears, unable to hold them back. In that moment, she was no longer the hardened doctor, no longer the woman who carried everything on her shoulders. She was just a small girl, trembling in her mother's embrace. "Mother, I'm sorry. I've neglected you for so long." Her mother held her tightly, crying silently. Hot tears fell onto Emily's cheeks, erasing every distance, every resentment, every mistake. The next day, her younger brother, Daniel, came to visit. He placed a bouquet of white chrysanthemums on the table, then sat beside her bed. His eyes were filled with worry and sorrow. "Sis, this time you scared me half to death." His voice was choked. Emily looked at him, her heart heavy. For so many years, she had missed the important moments with her family, and only now did she truly feel the pricelessness of their bond. "Daniel, I promise, I will never abandon you again." He squeezed her hand tightly, his eyes red. The two sat in silence, but within that silence was 1,000 unspoken words. By the second week after waking, Emily was moved to a patient room. Her body was still weak, but her mind clearer than ever. Every morning, as sunlight streamed through the window, she remembered the river of light, remembered her father's words. "You must live. You still have a mission." Those words echoed, a compass for her trembling heart. Emily began writing a journal. Each page held fragments of memory, every detail of her near-death experience she feared might fade. She wrote about the weightless feeling of leaving her body, her father's heartfelt call, and the wrenching choice between staying and returning. Writing eased her heart. She began to understand that life was not only about work and responsibility, but also love, presence, and the small, priceless moments. As her health slowly recovered, the hospital allowed Emily to be discharged. The day she stepped outside, spring sunlight bathed her face, unusually warm. She took a deep breath, letting the fresh air fill her lungs, and smiled without thinking. Back at her small apartment, Emily cleaned every corner. For the first time in ages, she placed fresh flowers on the table, played soft music, and let herself relax. No more sleepless nights buried in files, no more lifeless, cold room. One evening, she sat with her mother and Daniel for dinner. Laughter echoed brightly. Emily looked at their faces and suddenly felt like she was reliving her childhood, when her father was still there and the family gathered around the table. She whispered, "Father, I've come back. I will live differently. I promise." Months later, Emily returned to work. But this time, she was no longer the cold, distant doctor who only knew scalpels and charts. She talked more with patients, held their hands before surgery, listened to their fears and stories. Sometimes, just a smile or a gentle touch was enough to soothe a frightened soul. Her colleagues noticed the change. Emily was gentler, more patient, and above all, happier. Emily stood before her father's grave, holding a bouquet of white chrysanthemums. The wind rustled through the trees, leaves whispering like voices from the past. Father, I've listened to you. I've come back. I'm living. And I'm loving. A tear slid down her cheek, but this time it wasn't sorrow. It was gratitude. She bowed her head slightly, smiling in the blazing sunset. Deep inside, Emily knew one thing for certain. Her life would never be the same again. Emily's journey reminds us that only when facing death do we truly understand the value of life and love. What would you feel if one day you had to stand at the boundary between life and death, just like Emily? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to follow the channel for more heart-touching stories of extraordinary near-death experiences.